Hey guys, I hope you're doing great today, and I can't wait to bring you the show. But before I do, I just want to make a quick request. If you're listening to the show and you're getting good value and you're enjoying the content and you feel that it's valuable, if you could just take a second and go and give me a rating and review in whatever platform you listen, whether it be Apple or Google or Spotify, whatever it is, just go and give me a rating and review. That would be very appreciated. All right, guys, let's dive in.
So the 120 unit portfolio was basically all on my own. And so it was like where I really got like this aha moment was when I bought my first $1 million property.
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
All right, thank you for joining me on the show today. I've got a good one for you guys. I'm excited that you're here. I have someone with me today who I'm interviewing that does multifamily, and they use the BRRRR method, which is really cool. Really interesting story. A little bit tragic in the beginning, losing some parents, and just that kind of spurring him on, and realizing that he just wants more from his life financially than what they were able to enjoy while they were alive. And I just really had a good time speaking to Matt. He's a super honest, very transparent guy, which is always the best kind of interview. So a little bit about Matt. His name is Matt Drouin. He's a partner at OakGrove Development, a real estate investment and development firm with a special focus on value-add commercial and residential properties in Rochester, New York. Over the last 15 years, he has been in real estate management, brokerage, and development. He's grown his portfolio to over 120 units, both residential and commercial. His company's mission is to develop real estate projects that not only add value to their investors, but also put long-term community interest front and center. He believes that you can do well and good as a real estate investor, and that ultimately community-centric development boosts long-term profits for investors. So that should give you some sense of the kind of person he is, and those are the kind of folks that I like interviewing the most. So without any further ado, I give you Matt Drouin. All right, Matt, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me on Just Start Real Estate. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Mike.
Absolutely. Okay, let's dive in because you're doing some cool stuff, and I really enjoy kind of digging in. We deep dive on folks that we're going to interview here, and I won't lie, I've helped doing that, but I get to look at all that curated content and stuff that I found on my own, and it just looks like you're doing some interesting things, and I love the give back feel that I get from you, the kind of the community and helping people in the community vibes. So I can't wait to get into that. But before we do, let's dial it back and talk about why you got involved in real estate. How did you even go down this path? Was there some other, goal that you had in mind and real estate kind of took you out of that, or was real estate always it for you?
No, it wasn't always it for me. I got into real estate by accident. I went to a 4-year liberal arts school and studied business with a concentration in finance. And I had this vision that I was going to be immediately hired by Goldman Sachs or Bear Stearns at the time, rest in peace. And I was going to be this cigar chomping like Gordon Gekko type right out of college. Well, I graduated in 2006. The economy was okay at that time, but they were not hiring liberal arts students with a general business degree with no experience at that point in time.
Yeah.
So I got my slice of humble pie, so to speak, when the only job I could find at that point in time was a part-time bank teller with Chase Bank. And it was really embarrassing because the Chase Bank I had the job at was actually in my hometown. Okay. And so I would be seeing like my high school friends and that sort of thing come in, and I'd be like counting them back money and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And
I was sort of I had sort of have an inferiority complex in the town I grew up in. My parents were, blue collar background. We moved out of the city of Rochester because they wanted to send my brother and I to a great school. And they scraped together every single penny they could find and bought a house that they could afford in this neighborhood. So it was an affluent, predominantly white neighborhood. And, I was, always dealing with hand-me-downs and stuff from the clearance rack and that sort of thing. And I was going to school with kids that were driving nice imported European cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
so I was definitely that paired with the fact that, money was always a strain on my parents' relationship. It eventually ended up driving them apart. And that was, and that set in motion a lot of just childhood trauma associated with just, your parents splitting and then having like, weird step parents and boyfriends and girlfriends and that type of thing, and being a child in the mix of this whole thing. And it really hit home to me. It was like when my mother passed when I was 20 years old. And I was in college at the time. And at the funeral, my dad looked me in the eye and he said, "Matt, I really wish I would have worked out things with your mom." And me thinking like, I thought things were completely like over, they were separated, they were done. And this was years before. And I found out is that it was, my father was working at Genesee Brewery as a general laborer. My mother was a dialysis nurse, working odd hours. And my dad, to try to get ahead, was, working real estate at night and on weekends. And my mother wanted him home at those times. And that's kind of like always became the strain between them. Okay. So I was at the bank for 2 months. I told my dad, I was like, I'm sick of this. I'd rather, eat a poop sandwich rather than going to work and that sort of thing. So he offered me the opportunity, hey, get your real estate license and become a realtor, and I'll show you the ropes. And that's kind of how it started. And I only was, bought my first property when my dad basically said, "Matt, you got to move out of my house." Cause it, at that point in time, it wasn't, I'm like on the tail end of the millennial generation. And at that point in time, like living with your parents was like not, a great look for the parent or the kid. Yeah. So he was like, go out, find a multifamily, live in one of the units, rent out the rest of them, live in an area that you want to live. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what's the area I was, brought my fake ID to, like when I was a kid. So it was like the areas where there was the bars and the young college graduates and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's where I got access to my first property. It was a 4-family, and I used, scraped together $16,000 and bought this property. That's where I got my start.
Wow. That was solid advice by your dad. Like, that's really good advice. I wish my dad had told me that when I was in my 20s. Now he basically got to the point where it was like, you got to move out. Just mm-hmm. for my own sake, how old were you when that happened? Were you like, you weren't like 35 or something?
No,
okay.
I was 22 years old.
Oh, okay.
So
wow, okay. I wish my dad would have told me that when I was 22. It's awesome, but yeah, that's crazy. And yeah, you're losing your mom in your early 20s is horrific. That's just that's bad. But I mean, solid advice. I mean, you basically house hacked, right? You bought it. Was it a duplex? Is that what you bought?
It was a 4-plex.
Oh, okay, 4-plex. Great. Great.
Yeah,
and you lived in one of the units and rented out the other 3?
Rent out the other 3. And plus, like, I painted the attic, and I moved up there and like basically rented half of my apartment out to a friend of mine. So nice. I was actually making like $300 a month and being like, rent free. Right. So that's really like when I got bit by the bug, is like when I got paid on the first of the month, like 2 weeks after I closed mm-hmm. by the tenants. And I was like, it was like $1,800. And I realized like how hard I had to work as a realtor to earn $1,800 in commission, right. Showing like low priced properties in Rochester. Right. Sure. So, so I was just like, there is this thing like of passive income I started getting, exposed to, or passive-ish income, so because real estate is not 100% hands off.
Yeah. Oh, you mean but if you look, like all the gurus out there say, oh, no, no experience, no money, no time, no problem, you could be a millionaire. It's like so ridiculous, right?
Oh yeah.
So, all right. So that was your first deal. It was a 4-plex. Do you still own that property, by the way?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Still own it. Okay.
It's easy for me to buy property. It's hard for me to sell property. So
that's cool. I like asking that question because I think it's interesting the amount of people who go on to have really great success in real estate and still own the first property that they bought as a rental or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So you did that first one. What was next for you? You got bit by the bug, and I've been bitten by that bug, so I know what that's like. Where you're like, oh my gosh, like your head's spinning. You have all these ideas, and you're super excited, and you're going to explode. What did you do next? What was the next move in your career?
The second idea was actually my dad's idea too. And it was a 4-family. It was down the street from the one that I bought. That was like the worst house in the street. So, and he's like, son, I know how these things go. They're going to sell that property someday. So every time I got together with him for like beers and pizza and that sort of thing, it's like, hey, did you check out that property on the street? Did you get in touch with the seller? Like blah, blah, blah. And, to make the old man shut up, I found I was like, I gotta buy this thing. So that's what I did. And I found the seller. It was actually an estate attorney. And so then I contacted the estate attorney. She got me through the house, and I was able to go through it, run some numbers. Like I put together some sort of rough conservative budgets and that sort of thing. And I was like, all right, well, I need to buy this thing for $80,000 in order to make the numbers work. So I made them an offer for $80,000 cash, and they accepted it. And then I was like, oh crap, I do not have $80,000 in cash.
Oh, that's awesome.
So then I got exposed to a private money lender, which was actually owned a mortgage company we referred a lot of business to as realtors, and he lent the acquisition plus the rehab. Nice. It was like 7% interest, which was great at the time.
Wow! And
also it was interest deferred, so I only had to pay him the interest back in payments once I refinanced the property. My first house was a house hack. Second house was a BRRRR.
Wow.
And for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat is the strategy. So that's when I got tuned into like, all right, I can buy real estate and not have any money of my own. So that's kind of set in the motion. I got bit by the second bug, right? So and that's kind of how I started going.
You can see unlimited scale when you don't have to come up with the money on your own. If the money can be provided, like, what are the barriers at that point? They're really just how hard you want to work and whatever your ambition. But so your dad sounds like a rock star. He gave you the second piece of advice. Like, I'm going to need to get his number next and give that guy a call and see what he's up to. So that's so cool. So you got 2 now under your belt. You're a young guy. What's next? What happened after that?
So I decided, I was like, all right, I have to grow much, much bigger and get 100, 200 unit type deals and that sort of thing. So, and what really drove that was the childhood trauma around the lack of money, the divorce, my mother passing, and then my dad passed away suddenly from a heart attack.
I apologize. Then I can't call him. That's sorry about that. Terrible.
You can pray to him. So
I'll pray to him.
So, Mr.
Mike, if he answers and I can get him on the show, believe me, that will blow up, and I'll really appreciate it. No,
he would have loved that. So, so that's really what, and that was like sort of like, I really, really have to fast track this thing. So I started working for larger scale management and development companies to get experience managing larger stuff. And my one mistake was that I thought that I needed to have that experience in order to have the credibility, in order to have like the permission from the universe in order to purchase larger stuff. Well, it didn't really give me that credibility, but it did give me a certain amount of confidence, which allowed me to, when I spent 6 years in the development and management field, I was like, I saw the developer I was working for, and I was like, this guy isn't really that smart. Like I knew
you were gonna. That's awesome. I love that. I love that.
So no, but I mean, he gave me a lot of experience. I mean, I was able to go like a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of every like single piece of real estate asset class, from self-storage to medical office to retail to industrial, student housing. So that really gave me the experience of being like, all right, what do I like? What do I don't like? What do I not like? How are these deals put together from a financing standpoint? Like, what does the capital stack look like? And so I was able to learn a tremendous amount from that. And so I was like, after my dad passed, I was like, I need to focus 100% of my energy behind this. I left that company because I had some passive income from the real estate investments that I wouldn't starve leaving the company. Mm-hmm. And I gave that my 100% focus. At that point in time, I had 14 units. That was back in 2016. And now I'm up to 120 units of residential and commercial properties.
Okay.
And mostly the way I scaled that portfolio was through utilizing the BRRRR method, but on larger multi-million-dollar properties.
Right. So what gave you more confidence, your experience or how dumb your developer was? And which one of those was more? No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Okay. So I get it. So you went kind of to bigger projects. You started doing the bigger projects. Just for folks that are listening to this and they go, great, I get how maybe you did the first one. You had to come up with 16 grand, right? Okay. Doable. That's within striking distance of a lot of people. And then the second one was finance with a private investor. Got it. Okay. But when you start, I think what people get afraid of and they hesitate, maybe they've done a couple of BRRRRs or a couple of flips or whatever, and they go, well, I'd like to do apartment buildings, but how am I going to come up with 100,000 or two? Like, how did you make the leap from borrowing for single family to borrowing and finding and raising money? I don't know if you had to raise money for your multifamily stuff. And are you doing it alone? I don't mean alone in terms of, do you have nobody helping you, but do you have partners that come in and bring some of the money, or how do you structure that?
So the 120 unit portfolio was basically all on my own. And so it was like where I really, really got like this aha moment was when I bought my first $1 million property. And that was an office building located really close to the other properties that I owned. And that one I had to raise $300,000 for. So I basically went to friends and family. I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and I always heard about people like, you're not asking for money, you're providing an opportunity for people. So that kind of flipped my mindset, and I reached out to people that I knew had money. And I presented to them like, this is the deal. This is my plan with it. This is how much money I need. This is how you're getting paid back. I always started with how you're getting paid back first in my presentation.
Yeah.
And so that's how I was able to raise the capital for that. So I used $200,000 of it for the down payment. I used the rest of it for smart capital improvements, as well as funding an operating account for that. And in about 3 years, I was able to push the value of that property from $1 million to $1.6 million over a 3-year period. So I was able to refinance and take them out. So and then I was like, all right, I can just recycle this over and over again. I found that like that deal alone, like cash flows $40,000 a year, right? That's my daughter's college education.
Yeah, right.
So I found it was like, if I can focus on that $1 to $2 million range or higher, like I can actually get these deals that will finance like major like life events. And so I mean, that was just completely blew my mind. But I started a development company with a partner of mine, and that's somebody who I partnered up with a couple of years ago. And now we're focusing on more transformational development projects in sort of marginal neighborhoods, mostly vacant buildings, and reactivating those buildings through repositioning them or redeveloping them.
Got it. So you're doing sort of the BRRRR method, you said, with a lot of these places. So is the strategy, and the BRRRR method, the strategy is to hold them long term, right? Are you holding these long term? Is that the plan? Why not? You raise the first one from $1 million to 1.6. Why not sell it, get your 600,000, and then you don't need to raise money theoretically for another deal like that, right? Like why not just make the money, right?
So I have a net worth goal to grow my net worth to $20 million. I cannot do that on my own. I need to partner with investment partners. So, and go after much larger deals. And the one thing too is that as a real estate broker myself, I've seen what the 1031 exchange does to clients. It's like a gun against your head, and people don't make good decisions in that type of scenario. So I found that, my dad used to tell me, dig your well before you're thirsty. So I figured, all right, well, if I can establish a track record with partnering with investors on, properties I could probably fund myself through selling a property here and there, then I can build out that track record and that network and just credibility with people, so that if I want to take down $20, $30 million properties and development projects, we can do that easier. Because if you do everything on your own, and then all of a sudden you're going, oh, I need to raise $5 million, give me your money. If you don't have that track record of working with people and have those relationships, it's going to be very, very, very difficult.
What are your preferred methods? And I kind of hate my own question I'm about to ask. I think I know the answer, but I think that this is important. I think people might want to know. What is your preferred method, if any, to raise the value of multifamily? And I know there's a lot of ways you can raise the value, right? Go from 1 million to 1.6. Is there a way that you kind of look for when you're underwriting a property, or is it just like, hey, I'll do whatever is there, I'll take what it gives me, or how do you handle that?
Through my experience on the larger scale management is that I can review historical financials and understand where there might be waste on the expense side of things. I can understand where there might be management problems that can be hamstringing the growth of rents for the product as it existing as it is. So I can definitely, my past experience brings a lot of value to seeing the potential in a property. Also really, really understanding the market or submarket where that property is. Cause I do multifamily, and also I do commercial properties as well. And then, come up with a plan to do that. Really what I look for is something that has some undiscovered value to it. The office property that I bought in BRRRR, so to speak, I knew that the rents were too low based upon my knowledge of rent comps in the area. I knew that the expenses were way too high. It was managed by a management company that was just, they had a full-time, they had one of their full-time employees allocated 50% to this property. This property is a 16,000 square foot building, not a 60,000 square foot building.
Right.
So I knew that there was a lot of inflated expense numbers on there. So just understanding those types of things is kind of like where I am, but I definitely I've done stuff from like light cosmetic rehab to full gut, change of use, renovations, that sort of thing. I definitely prefer the, light cosmetic rehab, put a little bit of money into it, reposition the property, add the value that way. Cause you can add that very quickly once you, increase your income and then, able to normalize expenses. You can drive that value very quickly without taking a lot of risk. Yeah. So that's my preferred method.
Absolutely. Okay. So you answered kind of my next question. I was wondering how often you do like major renovations. Do you typically, and just stop me if I'm completely off base here. How much is it when you go in? Let's assume that they're not charging enough in rent and there's some improvements that could and should be made. Do you typically raise the rent, wait and see who kind of like flushes out and says, I'm not going to pay that much, so that you can go in and is that how you, because I think the one of the questions people have sometimes with these multifamilies is, okay, you want to do the renovations, but you're 75% full. Do you have to wait until these people literally just want to move under the current conditions? Or do you just say, hey, rent's going up, you end up getting this mass exodus and you're like, good, because I need to renovate all these things anyways. How's that cadence look usually?
So on a multifamily property, multifamily mixed use property I did a couple of years ago. This property was, this is a completely different beast. This property was like 2 blocks away from my house. I had a very personal interest in actually redeveloping or repositioning the building because there's a lot of drug activity that was going on in the building. There was, while we were walking through this property, there was people that were passed out in the hallway with needles sticking out of their arms. And there was cockroaches, there was mice, rats, bed bugs, the whole 9 yards in terms of absolute horrors, for a property. So with that one, I, was able to go through and see what tenants all right, this person takes good care of their place. This person obviously does not. I kind of was able to all right, I'm going to take these people, I'm going to relocate them to, another part of the building and to a renovated unit for them at a pre-negotiated discounted rent. Because essentially, I definitely don't, prefer the method of just displacing people.
Sure.
If I don't have to. That's why I'm more focused on vacant buildings or commercial properties rather than, value add multifamily for that reason.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's, and that method I learned from the development company is that, we kept a lot of residents, we moved them to, renovated apartments. That way we had that captive audience there. We moved them over. We knew that they weren't taking enough units where it was going to be destructive to the after repair value from a net operating income standpoint. And then the thing is that sometimes people take over and you got people that are behind on rent, and you have to you got to flush those people out.
Yeah.
So that's generally my experience in the past with that.
Do you typically manage the buildings yourself, or do you hire a company? How does that normally work?
So part of my partnership with my partner David is that we formed a management company to manage my assets and then manage the assets we're going to acquire together.
Okay.
The reason why I had experimented with third-party management, and it was I just never really had good experience with it.
Okay.
Just we're not on the ball, not giving our tenants the service and attention that they needed. And the thing is, the management company, the third-party management company model is sort of flawed a little bit from a multi-site management standpoint. So if you got 20 units here and 16 units there, they really can't size appropriately based upon the management portfolio they have.
Yeah.
So they really have to run their crew ragged and always be behind the 8 ball in order for them to make money, which they're entitled to for running a management company. Believe me, management sucks. So I just didn't feel that there was a a really, really good focus on resident retention, which is where our focus is.
Yeah.
So I knew that the only way we're going to influence that was through creating a management company. And I don't run the management company; my partner does.
Okay.
So I get myself like out of that, and it doesn't, tap my like positive mental like mojo, I guess.
Yeah. Property management can be rough. And I had this conversation. I had Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets on the show a few weeks back, and we had this conversation about whether or not you should manage your properties yourself or hire someone to do it. And one of the reasons we were talking about why you should hire someone to do it is so that you don't get kind of wrapped up emotionally in what's going on, because it gets difficult to make good business decisions when you like are on a first name basis with all your people. Because when things go south, I mean, I bought a property and it was way under rent, and I was like, I'm going to go in and raise the rent. I mean, they're paying way less than they should be. And I got there and they were super nice and they were petrified they were going to get evicted. They don't have any more money to spend. It's like, I just went, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to leave the rent the way it is. As long as they pay on time. That was sort of like my line in the sand. If they're late, they're going to get evicted. I'm not going to tolerate people not paying me rent and paying low rent, and they've just never missed a payment. And so I just left them in place, right? But that's not like, you can't run a business. I mean, it's a one-off for me, but you can't run a business like that. So yeah, that's fine. And I think just the positive mojo, like you said, like it's a very stressful business. So anyways, I just was wondering if you had somebody else do it, if you did it yourself. I figured you can do it yourself with 120 doors. That's a lot to try to do just by yourself, right? What does your team look like? I know you have a partner, but do you have other people that you have full-time or working for you and your team? And what kind of folks, who do you have on the team?
Yeah, so we have a couple of maintenance people that are on our staff. We have a bookkeeper, we have a leasing person, and then we have David, my partner, who runs the operations of the management company. The maintenance people are sort of split allocated to also being like on-site superintendents at some of our like development projects, so that they manage the actual subcontractors that are executing those renovation projects that are over there. So that's what our staffing looks like currently, and it seems to be a good mix. We're trying to get to the next rung of, once we get these properties stabilized after they're redeveloped, then bolting those onto our management infrastructure, that we can bring on a full-time like property manager person, so David can step away from that goal. Because essentially, if you're trying to grow, like you're essentially a salesperson, and the most important part of a salesperson is like maintaining that psyche, is like to not expose yourself to like the minutia and negative energy associated with management, because tenants do not. I can count on one finger. in my 15 years of doing this, I've had a tenant call me up unsolicited and say, "Hey Matt, I just want to let you know you're doing a great job. Like, you guys are killing it." Yeah. And you don't get that. You get problems. Tenants call you when there's problems. Yeah. So it's definitely important for people if they're looking to grow the business. Like, yeah, you might have to self-manage eventually, but don't be afraid to give up stuff. It's worth it to pay other people that are qualified professionals to do that. And sometimes it can start as like a very, very informal 1099, subcontractor that'll do like your maintenance stuff and that sort of thing. Like getting out of that, getting a leasing person that you pay $350 to $500 to lease your apartments for you and stuff like that. And as you grow, you can sort of start bolting these things on, and then you can essentially get official in terms of building a team of full-time employees, if that's what your ambitions are. So that's definitely something, I used to do everything myself, and I'm always relieved when I actually give up something and give it to somebody else. So
that's solid. That's a great, I'm glad you said that, and thank you. It's a solid plan for how you build out a team. Cause I think people get tripped up on like, I can't afford to hire all these full-time people, like 1099 part-time, like just, you can ease into it a little bit, no matter what your model is or what you're doing. Quickly, and I know this isn't necessarily a quick question, but how do you find deals? Like what's your method? And it looks like you're staying kind of local. You're not like buying them in California and Florida and all these places. You're staying relatively local. How do you find deals?
Oh my God, there's like so many different ways. We really push into every single channel. Very, very most important in terms of commercial deals is relationships with commercial brokers. That's definitely a really, really huge source of deals. For smaller, like, single family to 5 family type of properties, a lot of commercial brokers don't really operating there, it's mostly residential dominated. That's where you can get a lot of like, quote unquote off market deals. But commercial brokers are really, really important. Also the thought leadership platform, you have one, I have one, and being considered a subject matter expert with everybody that is in your sphere and growing that sphere is very important as well, so that you can essentially build relationships with, thousands of people, so that when you have a business conversation with somebody, they feel like they already know you. So definitely a thought leadership platform. We definitely get a lot of inbound leads from there, from potential investment partners, to real estate deals as well, from real estate investors that, they may be doing a lot of, smaller stuff, and then they come across a big deal and they don't know how to take it down. So they call us, and, we'll basically throw them a bird dog or something like that. And so that's like, the three big ways of doing that. But, it's not like, we're not looking through some super secret list of like, foreclosure properties or tax liens, that sort of thing. I mean, it's, so some of it's commercial brokers, sometimes it's direct to seller. So.
Gotcha. So do you guys do like direct to seller mail? Do you do that kind of stuff or no?
I've done that in the past for smaller stuff. I've gotten great response out of it. You just have to be consistent with it.
Sure.
You got to be also pretty large scale too, in terms of, if you send out 1,000 pieces, you may get, maybe 5 people that will pick up the phone and call you and email.
Right.
4 of those people are going to tell you to F off. But I've definitely gotten a good response from there. From commercial deals though, not so much. Most people that own property that would be investment property, right, are sophisticated. They have relationships with commercial real estate brokers. They already have their rapport there. And so that's really like where I think the key is to that. But, sometimes there's properties that, we've driven by, write the address down, and, send a little love letter to them too. So, so we've done that as well.
Nice. Well, listen, we could talk about this all day. I love the, kind of like starting off at Chase, counting back money to your friends from high school, all the way up to your dad giving you super solid advice to get started, and where you're going now into much bigger things, and just using that BRRRR method, right? I mean, it's so cool that you learned all this. And one thing you said, I wanted to underscore it, and I the moment passed because we were kind of going in a different direction, but I want to point it out because I think it's critical, and I think you would agree it was critical to your history and where you are now, is you went to work for a developer to really learn what you didn't know. And I think I joked with you about the developer that was not that smart and he gave you confidence. But I mean, going to work, like, you're not too good to go to work for somebody to learn and accelerate your learning so you can get the confidence to go out and do it yourself. And I think that's why some people fail, is they're like, I'm the CEO. I can't work for anybody. I'm a CEO. I did one flip, so I'm a business owner now. Now I can't work for somebody. It's like, no, especially at the age that you were, like, go back and do it, man, and just learn so that you can have that experience that can push you forward. So thanks for that. Thanks for that advice. I appreciate it, man. It was great talking to you. I really enjoyed it. Best of luck to you in everything you do. Before we leave, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that? How can they find you if they want to reach out and ask you anything?
I think we have a lot of valuable information on our website. It's www.oakgrovecompanies.com. That's OAKGROVE companies.com. There we have our blog. We have our access to our links to social media, and we're really everywhere. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere, you're comfortable using social media and stuff like that. So definitely reach out to us if you have any questions. I'm an open book. I love to give value to other people, and put the ladder down and help people build wealth and earn financial independence, utilizing real estate as a tool for that. So definitely reach out to us.
Love it. An expert in the subject, guys. Reach out. OakGroveCompanies.com. We'll have it on the show notes if you're riding a bike or whatever, you're on a treadmill. We'll get this in the show notes for you. But Matt, thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your advice and your wisdom, and the best of luck to you, man, in the rest of the year and beyond.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time. All right, that was a lot of fun. Getting to know Matt and understanding how he built his business, going from a bank teller and being thoroughly embarrassed of what he was doing to multifamily success using the BRRRR method, which I know people do it. I know it's not unique, but most people don't talk about using the BRRRR method in relation to multifamily. They talk about a lot of single family, but there was a lot of value there in how he builds his business. And you can tell he's super transparent and just really, really wants to help people. So I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. But I can tell you when he was that bank teller, right? And a lot of you have that proverbial bank teller job where you just hate it. And like he said, you just felt like eating a poop sandwich because he just didn't want to go in there. And I know a lot of you feel that way. He did something about it. He did something about it. You need to go do something about it. Now's the time. There's nothing to wait for. There's no excuse that is acceptable when you're this miserable. So go out and do something about it. I can help you. Somebody else can help you, or you can just go power through it. But whatever it is, go get it done so you can change your life. All right, we'll see you next time.